here's what I want to update you all on. I will date this. It is currently, look at my calendar, it is February 17, Feb 17, it is the year 2025. And I am broadcasting this live on Instagram, but we might pop this exact same message up on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, hey YouTube folk, no matter where you are, please be sure to follow, subscribe, do all the things so you get my updates. Also, if you haven't joined my email list, that is something to get on. You can find that on my website just so that you get my updates. But this is a formal update on video. So next week, which is end of Feb, starting on Feb 25th, it's a Tuesday, for 1 week, it's a little more than 1 week, Feb 25th to March 4th is registration for my 12-week curriculum, online nervous system rewire curriculum called SmartBody SmartMind. We often call this for short SBSM. So SmartBody SmartMind, I've been running this for a lot of years, almost 10, because the first iterations of SmartBody SmartMind were starting in about 2011, 2012, and then we got into the 12-week format a little later. But this next round for I guess it would be late winter, early spring 2025 is the 17th time we've run this powerful online curriculum. I'm not going to get into details on what do you get and how it works. I'll be doing more of these talks over the coming 2 weeks, and all of that information is on the site. You just go to the quickest way is join SBSM. All the information is there. You can get on the wait list, etc. What I will say is this has been tested and tried via thousands of people globally. I think we've got people in over 90 countries that have gone through this curriculum. So it's not something that I just came up with in the last couple of years. It is an amalgamation of all of my work within the fields of somatic experiencing, Feldenkrais, and then my work and mentorship with some of my other mentors who focus on early and developmental trauma, pre-verbal trauma, namely Kathy Kane and Stephen Trell. So my lineages in the trauma world come from the work of Peter Levine, Somatic Experiencing, and big props to Peter and what he put out in the world. And so I'm taking that work and amalgamating it with my training in the Feldenkrais Method, and of course my other trainings in other areas as well. So just a little bit of an info about SBSM and what it is. The course is about learning. So I'll start with that. It's about learning, and it's really, if I bring it down to the core, it's about learning how to learn again. And it's about learning how to get into our body, our mind, the environment, but all at once. And while that might seem a bit cryptic, it really does come down to having this full connected self with self, environment, and others, as well as our past history, our current moment in time, and the future, right? As higher brain mammals, these brains of ours, they think into the future, but they also can think into the past, which is sometimes not the best. And so part of our learning when it comes to regulating our nervous system and going forward in life in a way that is more evolved, less reactive, more full of vitality and health, connection, freedom, expression, authenticity, we must work with the dysregulation in our nervous system. And when I was just bringing down some notes for what I want to share with you today, I've got three events next week, and I'll name them in a second, that really all stem from having dysregulation in our nervous system. And I'm going to separate these three topics into 3 1-hour Zoom events. So the Zoom events are free of charge. You can sign up for them currently on my website and look for the title Unraveling the Nervous System's Role in Anxiety, ADHD, and Autoimmune. So there's 3 topics. And while they have similar themes and foundational elements that create these, we would call syndromes, they stem from dysregulation in the autonomic nervous system. So some combo of fight, flight, and freeze, as well as shutdown and collapse, being in chaos with each other. Or we might be more dominant in one of these nervous system states. And I'll talk about these states in these chats. Now, the one thing I wanted to mention is there is zero shame in knowing that we might have dysregulation, that we might even have functional dysregulation. Some might call this functional freeze. And we can also be functional in fight or in flight or in shutdown. I would say that it's a pretty strong knowing, at least in my world and work, that to live in this world that we're in, we need some level of functionality, and we have to dampen a lot of what is under in our system. And so it is a fine art to work on these dysregulations, these stored traumas, while still interacting in the world. We cannot put the pedal to the metal and just push through our healing and try to get it all done, like ripping a Band-Aid off. It doesn't really work typically in the way that we are currently here as humans on planet Earth. We can try to, but even if we have all the time in the world and we don't have children to look after and responsibilities and bills to pay, our system can only take so much at a time. And so when I get into these talks next week, I'm really going to be talking about the process of going slow. We would call it being titrated, not just in our practice, but in our learning. The importance of integration and really taking time to slowly let the information seep in, and how that information changes how we see things, how we feel ourselves, how we see others. It has to be done in a slow way. There's no other way. I've been doing this long enough and with enough students to know the power of going slow, the power of taking time, but we do need to do something. And that, I think, is the part that I'm starting to see, I'm a little worried about, is I'm starting to see, because so many of you are burnt out from doing so much healing, so many techniques, so much education, so many bloody online summits, which I contribute to, so I'm partially to blame. So much training, so much mentorship, all these things, all these protocols, all these detox things, all these all these things, that we get to this point where we don't realize our healing is in survival, which obviously if we're in dysregulation, we are living in some form of survival stress, but we have to like shift gears, to use that sound of a car gear shift. We need to get it into low and go slow, but we still have to go forward. We still have to go forward. We don't want to be stalled. We don't want to be revving in neutral. We certainly don't want to go in reverse, to use a car analogy, which I love making. We need to go slow and we need to go forward. And that is what I want to talk about next week. So the specifics. I already mentioned SmartBody SmartMind opening up for registration to new members next week, the 25th of Feb to March 4th. We only open up registration a couple times a year because it is a live semester. We go through the 12 weeks. It's really in the end about 15 weeks as a group. You do go at your own pace as needed, but there are live calls, these sorts of things to keep you connected to your peers in the training. But back to the talks. So the first one is going to be on the 25th, Tuesday, February 25th, 11 to 12 p.m. So 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific. All of them are 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific. The first topic is on anxiety. What anxiety is, what does it mean, what happens in the physiology. So I'll be breaking that down in relationship to the nervous system, healing trauma, and of course, the work I do and how it helps people move through into and out of this thing we call anxiety. The second talk is going to be on February 27th. That's a Thursday. Again, these are all on Zoom and you have to sign up. They're free of charge, but you have to sign up so we can send you and remind you of the call and send you the replay if you can't make it. So the second talk, 27th of Feb, all on ADHD and ADHD-like symptoms, brain fog, lack of clarity in focusing, right? Being scattered, procrastinating, resistant, not being able to focus, to really direct our attention to what we want. So I'll be talking about that and how that is related to our nervous system, specifically to early trauma. And I want to share a very short 2 sentences that are on Gabor Mate's websites, because he wrote what I believe to be one of the best books on ADHD and ADD called Scattered Minds. At least here in Canada, it's called Scattered Minds. And this is what he has on his first page. He says, rather than an inherited disease, ADHD and ADD, these abbreviations, is a reversible impairment. It's a reversible impairment and a developmental delay with origins in infancy. I would go so far to say in utero and transgenerationally. It is rooted in multi-generational family stress and in disturbed social conditions in a stressed society. So of course, we could say our history to look at when we're unraveling these pieces, but we also have to look to the societal pieces that are pushing us into more stress. Here's the thing though, how we deal with current day stressors and all the things in life is very much determined by how well regulated we are in our system. Because when we are regulated in our system, or we could say a little more regulated than dysregulated, we can sense when something is off and we don't go to it. We don't attach to it. We know how to put up boundaries. We know when to stop and take care of ourselves. We know when to say, I can't do this right now. And it doesn't come from a sense of shame or I'm not good at anything. It's just, this is the reality. My biology cannot take this anymore. And I don't have the capacity yet maybe for this thing or this thing. But at this point in time, this is too much for my system. I can't override. I need to step away, etc., etc. So much of what we do to ourselves in current day is we overload ourselves with so much stuff. But the interesting thing is that when we have fairly good regulation, we actually can bring on a lot because we're constantly recycling the stress in the moment when we're doing things. And this is something I see in my students time and time again in working with clients is when we have got better somatic capacity, more interoception, and more just general regulation on board, we can be in very stressful situations in our work environment, in our family environment, in cleaning our house, cooking, driving, and integrate that stress in real time so it doesn't stick. And this is something that is often hard to convey until we're in it, working with ourselves at these subtle levels. So trust me when I say one of the benefits to gaining more regulation and capacity within our nervous system is we actually are able to do more, and not in a toxic way, not in an overworking way, but we can do things in our world and constantly recycle and come out of what we might consider an activation response or a shutdown response. We catch it intuitively and biologically as we are relating to things in life. Trust me, It's something that you can build. It's something that I hope everybody can learn, because it'll just make being alive in this world, I think, a lot funner and a lot more graceful, more efficient, more easeful, as opposed to us needing to wait until we have more space or capacity to do things. We can do things in current time with that regulation and constantly recycle the stress levels. Because again, stress is not the bad thing. There's very positive things, very much lots of stress that's positive. Exercise, connection, projects, art, exercise, travel, so many things that are positive in terms of stress, novelty, but it's how our system is equipped to take that in, work with it, integrate it, and then move on. In other words, we want to have, I'm going to use my hand here, this nice up and down, activation, deactivation all day long. And of course, when we go to sleep at night, we want to be in low mode so that we can go into rest digest. I'll get into more of that next week. Speaking of low tone mode of our parasympathetic and rest digest, on March 1st, autoimmune. So I'm going to be doing a special talk on Saturday, March 1st, again, 11 to 12 Pacific on Zoom, talking about the roots, at least from my lineage, of where the heck does autoimmune stuff come from? Where does chronic illness come from? Where does chronic pain come from? Severe migraine headaches, anxiety disorders, depression, all the elements that tend to be really rampant right now, fibromyalgia, POTS, I'll even speak to long COVID, these things that are just so in our face right now, where folks are struggling with energy, struggling with vitality, struggling with immune system repair. Gut is another one. Being able to have good detoxification pathways from a autonomic nervous system perspective. So I'm not saying that, just heal your nervous system and all these things are going to perfectly, magically fall into place. And many of our students have done the diet, the exercise, the detoxing, the spiritual development, and they're still in these states of chronic fatigue, pain, fibromyalgia, autoimmune. And so I'm going to talk about how or why our nervous system gets stuck in these binds and creates what we would call syndromes. These are common topics that Peter Levine would speak about. And then, of course, in the model of somatic experiencing, we call these ailments syndromes, as opposed to this is a disease. So there's syndromes of a dysregulated autonomic nervous system cycling between one state and another, up and down, shutting off, being too high, being too low. So again, back to the little hand thing I just did, we want this nice, smooth flow in our system. There needs to be a little bit of activation. We need to come out of activation, but we also don't want to be stuck in our survival responses, because that's where things go sideways. So that's what I want to talk about today. More tactical in terms of logistics for next week. There's these 3 talks. One on anxiety on the 25th, one on ADHD on the 27th, and one on autoimmune on the 1st of March. This is in service of giving you guys more education so that you can see how these elements, these topics, these ailments, if you will, these syndromes, how they connect to the nervous system, how they connect to stored trauma, and then, of course, how SmartBody SmartMind, which is my online 12-week course, how this curriculum teaches you how to move into a greater state of capacity, regulation, and then, of course, healing. We have many stories where people have moved through these ailments. We'll keep sharing them. Of course, all of these stories are on the site, the SBSM site. There are a lot there, so do not be overwhelmed by the numbers of testimony and shares and videos, but they are worth checking out because some of my students have shifted a lot in the time that they've been with me. It is often not enough to work just with the mind and the thought process and the behavior. Those are important. But what we've seen is that when we get into the biology and work at this really it's the peripheral nervous system level. So everything that comes out of the brain and spinal cord, which makes up the autonomic nervous system, when we work with that level, because it's such a core foundation, it has a positive impact on how we think, because our survival physiology is not running the show. It's not running amok, right? So it shifts that. And then when we're also not in that survival physiology, our systems, our organ systems, are given a chance to heal and to recover and to repair. Our tissues repair because the system isn't just on danger zone alert mode. Someone says, I've been trying to get into your course to learn about my nervous system, but it seems the course is full this year. No, it is not. So I'm not sure if you got some false information. But yeah, we're going to be opening up registration next week on the 25th of Feb for 1 week. And we've so far, we've never had to cap it. There's always space. It is online. So that is what you want to do. You may have gone to the site and seen that there's a wait list. So apologies if seeing the term wait list makes it assume like there's no space, but that wait list is just to notify you when we open up registration. Yes, the Zoom chats will be live, and my husband Seth, also my colleague, will be there too, and everything will be recorded. So this is a more general question. I'll answer to the best of my ability in this format. So someone asks, my body won't stop having releases. So I'm assuming you mean shaking releases, what we might call trauma releases, but what they really are called stored procedural memories of the autonomic nervous system. And so you've said it keeps happening. You've had 30 in the past year, and you're not trying to have them. So any way to slow these down? So what I have found is that when this is occurring, obviously there's something stuck inside. I'm being real simple here, but there are old traumas or old survival stresses that are stuck inside, and they're trying to complete. They're trying to, we would say, deactivate. And what I've learned and what I've seen in my students is that if our full body capacity, so our ability to sense the detail internally of our organ systems, our breath, they're called the diaphragms. It's not just the true diaphragm, but the whole chain of diaphragms. It's from osteopathic tradition. If we aren't connected to that, or if those areas are more shut down in some areas, but really open in others, the system will try to get a release out, but the full system has to be online and in flow so that can move out. One of the simplest examples, sometimes people will get a massage, for example, and they'll get something worked out in, say, their shoulder, and it feels great, but then they have a splitting headache afterwards. This is often a sign that that top diaphragm, called the tentorium, and there's other areas in the skull, are still shut. And so the energy, the flow, the movement, the fascia wants to move, but it's like it's hitting a stopping block. So this is not apples to apples with what you're talking about, but it's the simplest, quickest way to explain it in this moment. So if we're having releases, but the releases aren't integrating and they're not fully resolving, it's like there's a loop that can't complete. And sometimes what needs to occur is less trauma release and more connection to maybe emotion or memory or resourcing, or more what we would call social engagement, or maybe we need more rest, or maybe we need to get our pelvis back online, or our feet online, or the joints of our body online, so that that release can come out. Because sometimes something might originate in the core, if we think of a threat response, maybe a fight response, but if a person's ankles are seized or knees are seized because of maybe, say, old injuries, or just that part of the body is not open, it'll get stopped. So it's a bit about slowing down the releases, but it's also about bringing more of your system online so that when those deactivations, when those old traumatic procedural memories come out, they have an exit point. And this is why so many of us struggle with these loops of things not getting better, and they get stuck. It's because there is this trapping in the system. And so this is a big part of what I teach in SmartBody SmartMind. It is not just theory, it's not just sensing things and feeling things. It is working. I teach you how to work with your diaphragms, how to work with your joints, how to work with the kidneys, the adrenals, the brainstem, the gut, movements of the spine, pelvis, connecting all these things together. It is a very vast curriculum that brings in all of my knowledge base. And again, what we've seen is that people have tried and tried and tried to relieve and resolve and release these traumas. But if they're just doing it from the sake of, say, a movement that's a behavioral movement or a somatic movement, it is not enough. You need the full piece, all the pieces on board and in good flow, good coherence. All the Zoom info is emailed to you when you sign up. So you sign up on my site and then we will email you all of that information. Like I said, if you want to learn a little bit more or maybe a lot more, I'll be doing these talks next week. Again, to repeat, Tuesday, all on anxiety, Thursday, all on ADHD and ADD-like symptomology, and then on the 1st of March, autoimmune and more, right? Because autoimmune, we clump this into syndromes. So if you want to join any of these talks, one or all of them, sign up. You need to sign up for each one because we'll remind you before each with an email, and each Zoom has its own link. We'll send you the replay afterwards, and maybe we'll see you there. Again, it's live. I'll be there. My husband and colleague Seth will also be there. And we're also inviting our SBSM members, so they will be there to listen, refresh, offer support, and maybe answer any questions you might have. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye for now.